forbid you are sitting in this place saying, I don't care about legacy. You need to care about it because somebody's got to live in the life you have. You are passing something down whether you want to or not.
Who are you? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Who am I? What am I here for? What am I intended to do? What am I good at? Or maybe you say things like, why am I so good at that? Why is this thing very natural to me, but maybe others struggle at it? These are all very good questions. And I'm reminded of a time where a friend of mine was expressing how he was closely in a relationship with a professional athlete. And they were essentially two worlds apart when it comes to their profession. But my friend was saying that it was interesting to him because this professional athlete was expressing one of the greatest difficulties in being a professional athlete wasn't the work ethic. It wasn't the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that I think we can all imagine they have to put into their craft, whatever sport that may be. It wasn't those things necessarily. It wasn't the travel. It wasn't the being away from family and things of that nature, although I'm sure those provide a certain level of difficulty and challenge and or hardship maybe. I can't imagine. However, my friend said that this professional athlete told him one of the most difficult things was simply being in public and people just essentially dehumanizing them, not treating them just like a regular human being because how we saw them was in the light of who we thought they were, right? To us, they were a professional athlete. They were a football player, basketball player, hockey player. I'm not going to try to name all the sports. I'll forget one and someone will be offended, I'm sure. But either way, we identify with then their status, their position, their title and label. And we can't even relate to maybe who they really are. And I thought that is a very unique perspective. And I want you to think about, is it possible we've done that with ourselves or other people we know in our lives that we maybe put in certain positions on pedestals, on platforms, or in a limelight per se, in which we then actually don't even see them for who they really are, or maybe it's even ourselves. So hold that thought, and we're going to jump into this here. You guys, welcome to the Mindset Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Velasquez, and I am so excited to be kind of bringing this thought process to the table for you. And ultimately, if anything else, it's not that I want to give you a step-by-step formula or a guaranteed outcome or result or any of that, right? Or even be the one to try to provide certainty for you because we live in that world. And I think that's why we often, sometimes, not always and not everyone, but often and commonly struggle with what I would call, and we are familiar with the term, identity crisis. Hey, if you're tuning in for the first time, welcome. I appreciate you. Thank you so very much. For those of you who have been listening, hey, do me a favor. Would you leave a comment or a review? Let me know what you truly think and share it with a friend, a family member, or someone that you're really thinking could be, and it could add a value or benefit to them. So do that. I appreciate it. Listen, it just helps us grow this audience. It's just how it works. And it's my simple ask is if you could share this with a friend or family member or somebody that you know would benefit from these podcasts. So I will be here regardless, but it's my responsibility to, right, in all authenticity, transparency, humility, all of that, ask. And so I'm asking if you would do that. I'd appreciate it. And back to, if you're here for the first time, welcome. I appreciate it. Tune in. And if you enjoy it, hey, leave a review as well. And just so I don't forget, because I want to just put this on the middle section here. Listen, I would, after this, if you want to get more connected, if you want to understand what it is I do outside of the podcast, hey, a couple of things. One, I provide a free email every single week, no strings attached. Simply, you have to fill out the form so I can make sure that the email gets to you. but that is free every Monday in your inbox to help you, to help myself even, just kind of get our mind right for the week and something to think about as we get started in our everyday work lives and environments, whatever that may look like for you. And then I'll also, right, I coach. So if you're thinking, man, I really want to, something in me stirring, I don't even know what it is. I can't even understand it. And I just need to make a step somewhere. Hey, sign up for a free coaching call. It's simply that, free. It's an opportunity for me to listen to you and where you're at and see if I would be a good fit for you, but better yet, at least help you maybe take your next best step in the direction in which is going to provide you the most transformation for yourself or your business or your family or wherever you're at in life. I'd be glad to do that. And I appreciate it and wanted to put it here in the middle so I don't forget at the end, because I have a feeling I'm going to be digging into this quite a bit. Who knows where we're going to go? So let's jump back in here with identity crisis. When we hear that, I think a lot of things may go through our brain, but I want to just kind of spin off of that concept of how easily I think we move from an original idea or the original intent of something. And I want to show you how quickly and unintendedly maybe we move away from it. And when we're talking about identity, there's a lot of different ways we could look at this. And the idea is, what makes you and I unique? We have plenty of things that we could see that make us similar, right? It could be the things we like. It could be that if I am a married man, you may be married, right? I have a wife, maybe you have a wife. That's something similar, but it doesn't necessarily speak to our unique identity and or the thing that makes us maybe different in a good way. Because I don't know about you, but the more variety, I think the more benefit we actually get. And sometimes that scares us, right? Why do we use the term that variety is the spice of life? I think that when we say that, it's pretty surfacey, but I think there's something that I want to kind of uproot a little bit more when it comes to that. And we'll jump back to it here in a second. But at the original foundation of this idea, right? And it's not my idea. This is nothing new. These aren't things I'm coming up with, but I believe that this topic of identity is attached to one of the, what I'm going to say in a courageous way, in bold way. And not that there aren't other things, but I think this is attached to one of the most silent epidemics we face in culture today. And it's at the root of it, it's identity, but it's amongst men, it's amongst husbands and fathers, because just being honest is because we don't know who we are. And so we end up living in the title, the label, the thing that we best identify with that makes us comfortable. And we don't really know who we are. And so we kind of stay stagnant in so many different ways. And I don't want to just be all over the place. Let me get back to the root of this first. So the original intent of identity. Now I believe this, that God, it says God knew us before he formed us in the womb. Okay. Now maybe you're like, I don't believe that. Okay, that's fine. But think about this. Before you were even born, your parents didn't know you were coming. They didn't know that you were going to be a boy or a girl. They didn't know that you would like sports or not like sports. They didn't know that you'd play an instrument, cook. They didn't know anything about you. They couldn't possibly know anything about you necessarily in a practical, natural sense. And so either way, the first thing they determine about you, and I, even in my own belief that God knew me before he formed me in my mother's womb, is what the text in the Bible says. That means that I believe he calls me something. He knew exactly what my unique identity was and why that was and why it is. But before we unravel it, let's just kind of go through the sequence of how easily, right, the original idea, the original intent of something, we quickly and unintendedly move away from it. And here's my example. I'll use myself. When I was born in the natural and I made my entrance into this world, the first thing that I'm identified as right? And this even happens before we're actually born sometimes with the technology we have, is I'm identified as a boy or a girl. So I immediately take on that now label as identifying who I am in one sense. Okay. This is not about gender ideology and all that stuff. I don't got time for that right now. So if you think that's where I'm going, I'm not. These are just facts. These are just what they are. When a baby's born, the doctor is on that birth certificate going to identify whether it's a boy or a girl. Then, right, if not before that, right after that, your parents identify you as a name. In my case, my name is Samuel. That's my full first name, right? So my parents now call me Samuel, and or some people shorten it up and call me Sam. So now I have two new labels right off the bat. Right off the bat, two new labels. I'm a boy. My name is Samuel. And as we grow and we mature and go through life, we get called many things. I'm a parent of 4 children. I laugh and I think it's funny in all the right ways. And I think, oh my gosh, we call our kids so many things other than their just actual name that we named them when they were born. And it's no harm, no foul kind of thing. It's all in good, you know, wholesomeness. So I'm not saying it's wrong. So hear me out. This isn't about that's wrong. It's about how easily, though, and unintendedly, we become who it is we're told we are because we never knew who we were to begin with. So now I'm a boy. My name is Samuel. My parents call me lots of different names. This is super silly. My aunt used to call me Sammy Gammy Wacky Brown. Like, what in the world is that? And it's just in good fun, right? And wholesome. And it's a great memory. And I love it. But as I started to do things and I got older and having siblings, and I'm one of 5, right? My siblings would say things to me to describe my actions, right? Like, let's be honest, right? Hey, you're an idiot. Hey, I hate you. Like, you get so angry, right? So now all these things are coming at us that we describe a person based upon the actions they have, but it still isn't their true identity. But if we hear those things enough, we might start to believe it. And believe me, that is true. And so we start to take on all these different identities, right? We have a grading system. When you go into education, the general education system, right? You come in and you are a what? You are a preschooler. And then you're a kindergartner. And then first, right? And as you grow, right? And we're using it to create, identifying marks as to where kids are at based on age. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but I'm saying they become titles and labels. And then right? Maybe later in life you start dating someone and you become a couple. Oh, how cute, right? So now you're a couple. And you can see hopefully where I'm going with this. We could go for a long ways and we become so many things. So let's skip ahead in life, right? So now you graduate. Now you're a graduate. Well, some people go the route of trade school. Now they're a tradesman. Some people go the route of, a university. Now they're a college student, right? So we have all of these names to identify what it is the person not is, but more or less what they're doing. But we sometimes let it become who we are because we feel good about the maybe status, and our ego gets fed by people I want to be identified as a university student, not a tradesman. Like how peasant like. And so we buy into these ideas that this is our identity, but it's not. They're just things we're doing along the journey, the story that we're in. And the original thing is God knew us before we were formed, and I believe he calls you something, and it is attached to your unique identity. Let me give you an example so I don't overlook it and I don't forget before we kind of keep moving down the path of how easily we might be walking in a false identity because we attached ourselves to something we're doing or something we did, and that becomes our identity, and it's not at all. So for example, let's use a comedian, for example, and I want to kind of map it out. Now that comedian, as we identify, has gone through the same phases and stages of life, right? They were born a male or female. They're given a name. They go through the education system. They're called a lot of different things by their siblings and, aunts and uncles, parent, whatever, all the different names that come at us. And we're using them sometimes to describe that person's personality or characteristics. And so, again, there's a wholesomeness to it, but that comedian eventually becomes a comedian. Why we call him a comedian. And we love comedians. You know why we love comedians? We love comedians because they usually use examples that we can relate to that are funny in our everyday lives. And they somehow we've become okay with, generally speaking, that a comedian can tell a joke about something that most of us can't, but in the environment they're in, it's okay and everybody laughs. And I think that's pretty funny in itself. And so what do we identify with comedians? We say things like they are funny, they're witty, they are creative, and those things are true. However, the question is that their identity? Is that who God calls them? Does he call them comedian? Or here's how I like to think about it. And again, this is an example. This isn't a formula. This isn't exactly what I'm saying. God calls a comedian or every comedian for that. But I want you to think about it. What if the reason that person became a comedian is because of their true identity? And here's the example. I think because God knew them before they were formed in the womb, one of the things that he might call them would be the one who likes to bring laughter to others. Well, that changes things. So if that's one of that individual's unique identities, right, or the thing that God calls them, it changes everything. That means that they're not just a comedian, that's just who they are. That means whether I see them on the stage or I see them in their home or in any other environment, that's just who they are. They love to bring people laughter. They love to make other people laugh for the right reasons. And that subtle shift changes everything about who they are because we identify with the surface level things like, well, they're a comedian, so therefore they're funny. No. Their identity is that they are one who loves to make others laugh or bring joy and laughter to others. Do you see how that might change things? That way, they don't have to just be on the stage, but what we do sometimes is we minimize them unintentionally or intentionally to a stage because that's how we identify with them. But that's not who they are. They're the one who loves to make people laugh, so they do it everywhere they go. And this can get very complicated and maybe sound complex or be weird or whatever. That's not the point. And that's why I said I'm not going to give you formulas. I'm not going to give you the strategy this isn't a how-to. This is a think about it for just a minute in your own personal life. What is it that you are very good at? What is it that comes very natural to you when you think about it and you realize, man, I just do that in any environment I'm in and it comes very natural. That's a good time to pause, to think and reflect and ask yourself, maybe that's more in alignment with my true identity. And here's why this is so critical and pivotal, I think, for all of us, and especially when it comes to men, when it comes to husbands and fathers in the home, is we tend to operate and identify with what we do more than who we really are, right? So I am now we're moving down the timeline of life, right? So I was a Marine. I am a husband. I am a father now. I am a uncle. Right. All these names are still there. But then what happens is my unique identity gets lost in what I do. So what is my identity? Oh, I am a husband. Is that true? Yeah. Is that necessarily my unique identity? No. Am I a father? Yes. Am I a dad? Yes. Are you a wife or a mother or a mom? Same thing. Yeah. But is that your unique identity, right? Here's another example of how do we distinguish that and what I'm saying. We are all humans, right? That's true. Is that simply our identity? Not necessarily. It is true that we're human and we identify with that term, but who is it that God might call you? Well, that's very uniquely different than what he calls me. And here's the proof. Why is it that all of our maybe it's not the proof for you. Here's an example. Our fingerprints are all very different. There's no one fingerprint that's identical to someone else's set of fingerprints. We all have our own unique fingerprint. So is my fingerprint what it identifies me? Sure, in terms of being able to match them up. So if I have a fingerprint somewhere, I can now take my finger and do another print and see that it matches. And it proves, as a matter of fact, this is the person we thought they were. But it still doesn't tell me what my unique identity is. But at least it shows there's a uniqueness to every single individual. And that's one way we can identify who that individual was, but it still doesn't tell me who God says you are in that sense. And so my challenge to us today is maybe think about who it is that God says you are. And when you figure that out, when we know who that is, it changes everything about what we do and what we have. And here's what I mean. I am a son, a brother, a uncle, a husband, a father. I am a Marine. I'm a business owner, an entrepreneur, a podcaster. I am a friend. I am a cousin. I don't know if I said uncle or right. So there's so many things. My name is Samuel. Right. I can keep going on and on. I can give you features and characteristics and personality traits, but none of those necessarily speak to who I am. Those are all the things that people from the outside identify with me as. However, not necessarily is that my unique identity. And this is why it's so important, because when I know who I am, I can be who God's truly called me to be while being a husband, a father, a brother, an uncle, an entrepreneur, and not let any of those things become the ceiling or the thing that speaks to who I truly am, or better yet, let it become the thing that pumps my ego up because I am this, right? And in that, I am accepted. And that is why this is so important, because, like I said at the front end of this, I don't want to look at a professional athlete and only identify with them because they're a professional athlete and not recognize they are so much more than that. And I don't necessarily know who that is, nor do I always know what God calls someone, but I become very curious about what that is. So I don't just look at them through just one narrow lens and then identify or put them in a position to make them feel like we only care about them because of that particular identity we put on them. They're a professional athlete. No, they're not. They're more than that. That's something they do in the process of their story, but it's not who necessarily God calls them to be. And that is true for all of us. And so take a minute and maybe just sit there long enough. And I know it's unpopular. It's not common. It's not something that anybody wants to do, is get quiet enough. But maybe just as a challenge, sit there and say, who am I? Who does God say I am? And just wait and see what comes to your mind. And I'd even challenge you so much as to write it down. And in good faith, I will tell you exactly who God calls me. Because while all those other labels and titles and things describe things I've done or things maybe I've become, they don't necessarily tell you who I am. And I believe that the only person who can tell you who you truly are at a root level, from He knew you before you were even formed in your mother's womb, right? Then can speak to your true identity. And that's what's so fun about getting around people of different cultures and races and backgrounds and whatever, because none of those things define them. That's just how we associate. But the truer sense is, what is the unique thing in which God put them here for? And more importantly, who He says they are, and how can I figure that out and then speak to it in a way that encourages them and learn from it at the same time, right? Because that's the beauty of the uniqueness in which God's given them. Because guess what? We didn't ask to be born where we were born. I didn't ask. I didn't have any options and choices in whether or not I was going to be born in Rice Lake, Wisconsin, in the Midwest. I didn't ask for that. Within the greater continent of the United States. I didn't ask for that. It's just where God put me. You didn't ask me to be born where you were born. Most people listening to this are probably, I'm guessing in the United States. I know I got listeners outside of the United States, but you weren't asked to be born in Guam. You weren't asked to be born in a, Middle Eastern country as we identify. That's just where God put you, right? And that's awesome. And so my knowing my identity makes me wonder what it is God calls you. And my challenge is to ask him. And the thing he calls me is I am a chosen, accepted identity aligner. Go figure. And a friend of mine said, man, every time I get around you in a good way, it was a compliment. You are always talking about identity. And it's like, yeah, it's because it's who I am. And it's not that I can't talk about other things and that I don't talk about other things and I only talk about that. But there's a good chance if you spend enough time with me or you get around me in my sphere and we talk, that is going to come up because it's just in me. It's who I am. It's who God calls me to be. A chosen, accepted identity aligner, meaning for me, what that means, and it could be different for you. What it means for me is that there's nothing I can do to be chosen for the big thing. There's nothing I can do to be accepted beyond what God has already done. He's already chosen me and he's already accepted me. And the other two are more specific to what he calls me to do. He wants me to be an identity aligner. He wants me to work on my own self, but in the same frame of thought, help others do the same, help them discover their true identity. And it's not what you do, because before you were formed in your mother's womb, God already knew you and you hadn't even done anything yet in the natural sense. And so when you understand what that is, it'll radically change how you see everything in your life, your own self, the people closest to you within your four walls, your spouse, your children, your friends, your family, your coworkers, the stranger on the street, because we have bought into the lie of so many false identities. And the truth is, each individual person out there that we encounter has been given a unique identity according to who God says they are. And it may not make sense to you. And guess what? It doesn't have to make sense to you. It has to make sense to them. And I guarantee you, in only the way that I know God to do it, he will show you what that is. And guess what? It's beautiful. It's going to be something good. It'll never be negative. And I believe when you know and when you hear it and you sense it, and a lot of you already know this, it will bring so much joy to you. It'll light you up. You'll feel so excited and you'll be like, man. And when you feel that and you're wondering, it's probably because it's attached to who God really calls you and your true identity. And that's why he says to go out, be yourself, right? We say that, be authentic, be genuine, be transparent. Because when we're in our true self, there's nothing to hide. It's just who we are. And guess what? Some people might not like that, and that's okay. That shouldn't change anything. It's just don't impose it on them. Love them for who they are. And if you don't know who that is, don't necessarily shortchange them by putting a false identity on them because it helps you label them for what you think you know. But the truth is, God calls them something, and hang in there for them and just speak encouragement to them and help them get there maybe, or at least give them a chance. Okay. Because most people, a lot of the times, I've done it, you've done it. There are many times in our life where we're going to operate out of some sort of false identity. Because I can be in my true identity, and 3 seconds later, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm back in my false identity, doing something silly that God doesn't call me, nor does he want me to operate from that place. And nor should we be afraid or fear that we have to because we need to please man, or we need to be in the good graces of someone, or we need to get the title or the position, or if I get this spot or I get promoted or people see me in this light, man, I'm going to actually be accepted. But no, that's a lie. Then that's people putting a false identity on you, and they're really only accepting not you, they're accepting the position in which you're in, not really your true self. Hey, you guys, I appreciate you. Went a little longer than I wanted to. I'm just going to cut it off kind of hard and fast and land the plane. And I, again, appreciate you hanging in there. Please take a minute today, right now when you're listening to this, and just pause and think about it and ask yourself this question: who am I? And if you want to venture out there a little further and just take a minute, hey, close your eyes if you have to. to blot out all distraction and just be like, God, what do you call me? Or who do you call me? And just pause long enough, wait and listen. And what comes to your mind, if it is positive and it is good and it is loving, it's going to be who it is he calls you. And just bask in that for a minute. You guys, I appreciate you. Sam Velasquez with the Mindset Mastery Podcast, and we will see you on the other side. Peace.
God forbid you are sitting in this place saying, I don't care about legacy. You need to care about it, because somebody's got to live in the life you have. You are passing something down whether you want to or not.